The biggest nugget is self-care is not selfish. And the most important thing that you can do is make the investment in yourself, whatever that looks like for you, because it is going to exponentially influence everybody around you. And pay attention to the impact that you have as an influencer, because it is so powerful. So many of my clients, like, she's like, now I have a walking group every day at lunch. And I'm like, that's incredible. You did that. You started that. And it just takes one person to kind of kick off like the healthy behavior. So, be that person. You're either going to influence for good or for bad, but it's happening.
Mm.
So pay attention to that power. It is a superpower.
Welcome, Dr. Christine. Thank you so much for joining the Darren Will podcast. For our listeners, as you're listening today to our guest to share more about her personal journey and her professional expertise on menopause and perimenopause, I hope that you walk away with feeling more encouraged and inspired so that you can dare to be well despite whatever season of life that you're walking through. All right, Dr. Christine, thank you again for joining. Welcome. So, do you mind to give just a brief bio to just share like your expertise before we jump into the talk today?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rita. So, my background is as a scientist, a researcher, and a healthcare provider. And I've been doing these for many, many years. But personally, when I got to the age of around 40, I noticed some pretty drastic changes within myself that I found extremely unpleasant, particularly gaining 20 pounds and noticing just my whole being had changed. My personality, my why, my motivation. I felt tired. I felt just not like myself, really. And so I turned my knowledge of science and research and I went to the literature and I was on this quest to better understand what was happening to me and what I can do about it. I was always an athlete. I was always healthy. People would look at me and say, "Oh, you're in great shape." But when you don't feel like yourself and you're carrying 20 extra pounds around, to me, that's not acceptable. So I was able to use the literature, use the evidence to understand women because we're so unique, we're so different.
Yeah.
Women going through perimenopause and menopause are particularly different. And our needs are not the same as a young man's needs. And a lot of the research on health, wellness, supplementation, fitness has been done on college-aged men. Why? Well, because they're in college and they're like, hey, I'll do it if you're going to pay me, right? So
Right.
everything that we know is from the perspective of an 18-year-old boy's physiology, which does not translate to what's best for us. And I think that's why there's so much confusion around what do I eat? How do I move? Am I really supposed to take this supplement? And so my goal was really to simplify the evidence and always stay on top of the best evidence and then share protocols that I created with my own clients. So I basically used myself as a guinea pig, right? And there was some trial and error. In the beginning, I was quite desperate, if I'm being honest with you. I just wanted it to be fixed quickly. And I
Yeah.
think the first takeaway for your audience is there is no quick fix.
Mm.
And if you want real, long lasting changes to your body and your mind, you better buckle up and be ready to put in the work because there's no such thing. You read about these fad diets and cleanses and diet pills and all these things, and temporarily they'll provide some sort of change. But what I can promise you is none of that is going to last. So you've got to figure out like what works, what's sustainable, what is reasonable, because most women my age have a lot going on, right? We're
Right.
wearing 12 hats. We've got kids, our parents, jobs, partners, all of the above who need us. Yet we're not spending enough time investing in ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that because that's what I hope this conversation is about is just talking about ways to take care of ourselves as we're going through this season of our life. And I love how you're going to be able to break it down with this roadmap, which I'm excited to hear more about, but just simplifying, because I think that's the other thing. There's so much information out there, but it's also like, how do we make it make sense for us? You know what I mean? Like, it sounds
Hmm.
great, but how do we make that sound great in our life? And so thinking about practice versus practicality. So yeah. As would you like to share, or could you share more about like the myths of hormone replacement therapy and what that looks like?
Yeah. So this is actually a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. I want to back up just a little bit.
Sure, sure.
So, in the early 2000s, there was this very large study called the Women's Health Initiative, and it was done on hundreds of thousands of women, but they were quite old in relationship to menopause. So these people were very postmenopausal, late 60s, early 70s, and they were given Prempro. This was a long time ago, but Prempro is derived from horse urine. And the
Oh
study,
gosh.
yeah, so the study abruptly ended because they came to this conclusion that hormone replacement therapy causes cancer and heart disease and everything else. And actually, that couldn't be further from the truth. So, I am actually a big proponent of talking to your doctor to see if hormone replacement is right for you. Personally, I am on estrogen and progesterone replacement. When that happened, I felt like a different person. I felt like a switch, was flipped inside of me, because if you think about what happens to your body when you go into perimenopause, the amount of estrogen that you're making declines significantly. Well, estrogen is so important. It helps us to be metabolic. It helps us to feel more intimacy. It helps us with energy. It is such an important hormone. So I feel like just saying, hey, your body's going to stop making estrogen, you just need to deal with it, is unfair and unreasonable. My mother's generation suffered the most because they were right smack dab in the middle of this women's health initiative. They were never offered hormone replacement. So I think it's an important conversation that you should have with your provider and really understand the risks and the benefits. But what we know now with the data and the science is there are a lot of benefits to hormone replacement and very few risks.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So thinking about like all of the different changes that we experience, so the hot flashes, the changes with the mood. So all of that is related to the drop in estrogen, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. So
Mhm.
estrogen and progesterone drop
And progesterone.
significantly. And and there's such negative changes. Most of my clients come to me and they're like, I have got all of this weight gain in my midsection in particular, right? I can't sleep. That's a huge problem. If your
Oh my
sleep
gosh.
is
Yes.
dysregulated, forget it. They are very disinterested in any sort of intimacy. They don't have a lot of energy. And frankly, they feel like a crazy person because their mood, their anxiety levels, all of those things are just not at their baseline. And that has everything to do with hormones and how your hormones really take a sharp decline, starting at the age of 35. It happens way sooner than people realize.
Yeah. Yeah, I know as I'm coming into my middle 40s, or actually rounding out the after the middle 40s, I'm starting to think like, why haven't we had this conversation sooner? And so as a professional, I'm curious what your thoughts are of like why we are just now having this conversation. I thank God for Halle Berry and Oprah that
Mm.
are like out there speaking to the masses, but like why are we not talking about this more?
Yeah, I think you're going to start to hear a lot more women in science talk about the benefits of hormone replacement, because it really is a disservice to the community. But it's all fear-based, right?
Mm,
Physicians that were trained a long time ago still remember that estrogen causes breast cancer. And so it's hard to convince people otherwise. But that's why, as a consumer, you need to do your homework. You need to do your own research and you need to advocate. I can't tell you how many people will go to their provider and say, I want to get on hormones. And they're like, nah, you're probably fine. Let's try an antidepressant instead. That's criminal. There's nothing wrong with your mental health. You got to treat the root of the problem. So, really advocating for yourself, seeking alternatives, and then finding a new doctor if the person that you're working with is not willing to work with you.
Yeah. 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 I remember having that conversation very recently with my doctor, and she's like, yeah, you're too young for that. I'm like, the past 2 years says otherwise. I have been having all these symptoms. And so, do you mind to walk through some of the different symptoms? I know there's like
Yeah.
probably 30 or 40 different symptoms, but if you could walk through a few of those different symptoms.
Yeah, and some physicians will start treating just based on symptoms because if you're
Mhm.
starting to have them, then you know that the change is going to happen, right? Whether your blood work is showing evidence of it or not. But the biggest one people will report are sleep disturbances, waking up in the middle of the night. And that kind of goes hand in hand with hot flashes. So hot flashes kind of come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you feel like you're on fire. You'll wake up in the middle of the night, your sheets are drenched, and you're like, what in the world? And it's embarrassing. You've got
Yeah.
sweat pouring off of your body, your hair's wet. That's not, that's not conducive to being a productive individual in society to be walking around sweating all the time.
That ladylike.
Right? It's just kind of gross. So, like, we don't need to do that. Um, Mood disturbances, lack of energy, and then the big one where people end up coming to me is weight gain. And I haven't changed. Nothing's changed. I'm eating the same, I'm doing the same workouts. Like, I'm at my baseline. Yeah, all of a sudden I'm 20 pounds heavier. And oh, by the way, it's right in my midsection. So those are like the three big ones that are causing people the most it's making people really distraught. And that's what convinces people like, hey, I need to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully, this conversation reminds ladies that you are not alone. You're not crazy, you're not alone, and that there is support out there. So thank you for the work that you're doing, Christine.
Yeah.
Dr.
It's
Christine.
an honor. And, my mission is to help as many women as possible to look and feel their best. And it's through, having them understand what's going on with their body. But then, like, here's the recipe. Here is your recipe in order to reclaim your health and your fitness.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know if it would be getting too deep into the weeds to talk about the biological reason. I was doing some research and I'm like, oh, that's pretty fascinating of just like how like the hot flashes of why that's happening, like how it's trying to, I guess, get to the capillaries or something like that. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's a couple things, yes, when you're talking about like increasing blood flow, but also like you have this thermostat in your brain, right? That kind of holds your normal temperature. And when you're going through changes related to perimenopause and menopause, that thermostat is off. So you've got fluctuations in hormones, and it causes these events where you don't see them coming, and just kind of out of nowhere, you've got massive amounts of sweating, and it's very uncomfortable.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. So, what are some self care things that you can share with women, either that they can do themselves or they can seek out from a provider? So, I know you talked about hormone replacement therapy, but also what about hot and cold therapy? What are some other things? Of course, hydration. Like, what are some other practical self care things women can do?
So I think number one should start with your nutrition, because nutrition is
Mm,
so foundational to how every other organ in your body works. And most women have no idea what to eat. So when I work with my clients, that's the first thing we tackle is, let's talk about your current state of your nutrition and like how that needs to look different. Most women do not eat enough protein. We are we're confused about carbohydrates. Are they good? Are they bad?
are
Carbohydrates,
they?
they're
Are they
gr-
good?
they're great.
Oh, okay.
Carbohydrates are great. They are your essential fuel source. The problem, Rita, is that we're eating the most terrible types of carbohydrates that are coming from ultra processed foods that make us sick. And so this push to really pay attention to the amount of garbage that we're putting in our body is really important. So when you look at a package and you look at all these ingredients and you're like, I don't know what those are, do not eat that. Your carbohydrates should come from fruits, vegetables, rice, potatoes, like really good solid sources. I call them God's carbohydrates. Like those are what you should be eating. Any really, and this is going to scare people, but really anything in a package should be very
Mhm.
limited because it's all processed. Even if it
Yeah.
comes from a health food store, it's not, your body doesn't necessarily recognize it as food. It doesn't know what to do with it. So carbohydrates are important. Fats are important, but you've got to eat the right kinds of fats. So avocados, olives, olive oils, thick coconut oil, like those are the fats that you want to be eating. You know, there's a lot of information and people are more aware of highly toxic omega-6 seed oils, canola oil, grapeseed oil, corn oil, peanut oil, vegetable oil. Don't eat those, like ever. There is
Mhm.
zero upside. And worse, when you put those in a fryer and heat them up, they cause
Mm,
damage to the inside of your arteries. So
mm,
it's understanding the proportion of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and then like what you want to include as the majority of your fueling, and then what you want to avoid at all costs. I very
yeah.
much follow a 90-10 rule. You know, 90, if you're doing really well 90% of the time, you're in great shape. I don't think you should deprive yourself all the time, but as you go on this journey of having optimal health, the things that you think are like treats, you're like, yeah, I don't really want that anymore. It's not that, it becomes less enticing. So
Mm,
start with nutrition because that
yeah.
is foundational. You know, one of my favorite sayings is you can't out exercise a bad diet. And that is so true. You can work out all day long, but if your diet is not on point, you will never change your physique. You'll never change your body composition.
That's golden right there.
It's true.
Awesome, awesome. So start with nutrition, okay? And it flows from there. All
And it
right.
flows from there. So before we talk about hot and cold and hydration, the second thing is fitness. What are you doing to move your body? And the biggest mistake people make is they do way too much cardio. Women need to pick up the weights and they need to have a minimum of 4 days a week of strength training, whether that be with dumbbells, machines, resistance bands, body weight. You've got to do that. The importance of that cannot be overstated because you've got to put more muscle on your frame. As you get older, you naturally lose muscle. Muscle is your longevity organ. So your job is to add as much muscle as possible. It is hard. You will never turn into a bodybuilder. People are like, oh, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. That's kind of silly. Like you're not going to. That's not going to
That was
happen.
my fear.
Yeah, but like it's kind of an irrational fear, you know? So
Yeah.
more muscle on your frame means you're going to burn more calories at rest. You're more metabolic. I met with a client this morning. She put
That's
on four
good.
pounds of muscle
Mhm.
and she's 40. And I'm like, that is incredible. That is an
Mm,
incredible feat. And then we measured her basal metabolic rate. That's how many calories you need to exist. And it went up by 100. That means she's
wow.
burning 100 calories every day at rest just by existing because she put muscle on her frame. That's genius, but that's how
That
we're made.
is.
That's how we're made. So we've got to do more strength training. And then in terms of cardio, just walk. You don't need to be doing all this high impact, crazy cardio that stresses out your body, at least women who are in perimenopause and menopause. Just walk. It is the best thing you can do. Bonus points is if you can walk outside because you're going to get
Mm,
some vitamin D, you're going to just be out in nature, you're going to feel better. So that would kind of be my starting point with fitness. People get so overwhelmed. You don't have to go all in. Maybe you just start with walking and then add in a couple days of strength training. You know, a little bit is better than nothing. And that momentum, that consistency kind of snowballs to the point where you're like, oh, this is just part of like who I am and what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talked about hydration. Hydration is so important. I drink a gallon of water a day. You can put electrolytes in your water, you can flavor your water, but water is critical. It's important for your cellular health. It's important for your kidneys, your skin, your energy. So you got to just drink a lot of water, period. Do whatever you need to do to it to make it more palatable, but water is important. And then in terms of like hot and cold therapies, I'm a big fan of sauna. I have an infrared sauna in my house. I try to go in there every day. It doesn't always work out that way, but the health benefits of a sauna are incredible. That decreases your blood pressure, it detoxifies your cells.
Mm,
It is excellent for your just your health and longevity. Cold plunging cryo is the alternative, extremes in cold, also very beneficial in reducing inflammation and helping your cells to work optimally. So I love all of those things, but if you say that to somebody who's never done anything, they're going to be like, yeah, I can't. So where do I start, right? So nutrition is really like phase one, step one is get your nutrition in order. Then we can start working on the rest of it.
thank you. Thank you. Thanks for breaking it down. Like you are just like dropping all the knowledge. I appreciate
Oh, my pleasure.
it.
This is important because listen, chronic disease is rampant. We are, as a society, we're very sick. We've got diabetes, we've got heart disease, we've got Alzheimer's, and we've got lots of cancer. And so many of these things are preventable. So let's empower ourselves with knowledge so we can skip all that and, live the last 50 years well. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be spending time at the hospital. So a lot of this stuff really is preventable.
Yeah, yeah. I think I read a stat of like the top killer for women is heart disease.
Hmm.
And so thinking about just like some of these practical things that you've shared, it's like this is how to live healthy and then how to age gracefully. I think that was your quote of aging gracefully. And so I think that's really beautiful. Really beautiful. And I think it's
Yeah.
it's a simple way to think about it. Like I said, my husband's definitely got me thinking differently and definitely now after this conversation thinking very differently about muscle training, like weight training, I guess is the better way
Hmm.
to say that. But yeah, yeah, that's really cool. I love the statistics of how that changed for your client just by
Hmm.
putting on 4 pounds of weight of muscle mass and how that switched the how she was able to burn more calories. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And she lost 10 pounds of fat. So it's not
It's a good
about,
trade-off.
yeah, we don't want to be skinny fat, right? We want to be healthy and athletic. So the goal is to change your body composition to decrease fat and increase skeletal lean muscle. And that is what's going to make you healthy and well and vibrant and just feeling great about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if we have time to walk through kind of the roadmap or give us the overview of the roadmap.
Yeah. So when I onboard clients, I start with kind of how did you get to this point? Some people
Mm,
have had a really tough life and they're very overweight or very unhealthy. So I think it's important to meet people where they're at and start with like what is reasonable. Because if you put together a roadmap that is impossible, they're going to fail and then they're going to be more discouraged. So everybody's pathway is going to be unique to what your needs are. But starting with a good assessment of your current nutrition, what is your understanding of how you fuel your body? And
mm,
changing that perspective in your head of what food is. Food is fuel. And you are a beautiful sports car. Think about your favorite sports car, right? Lamborghini, Porsche, Ferrari. You're that, you're not going to put dirty gas in your beautiful sports car. So we've got to think
true.
about nutrition differently, right? And so only the best fuel needs to go in your car. And so starting there, people don't understand how to get enough protein, what it is. So I calculate, Rita, these are your macronutrients that I would like you to hit every single day. This is your protein goal. This is your carbohydrate goal, your fat goal, your calorie goal. And you've got to track. I track everything that I put in my mouth, and it gets exhausting and annoying. But if you aren't tracking, you're not improving. So we do a lot of mindless eating, and that the calories in that just build up and build up. So starting with putting together a nutrition plan that is balanced and very much focused on protein. And then the second part is your fitness. What do you have access to? Do you belong to a gym? Do you prefer to work out in your basement? It doesn't matter. You don't need fancy equipment to put together an exceptional strength training routine. And then I think the most important part, number three, is mindset. We've got
Mm,
to change your mindset around your self-worth, your identity. That whole worthiness component for women is so important because we feel guilty that we're taking care of
yes.
ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yep.
How
Yep.
messed up is that? Like
Yeah. And we're the one taking care of everybody.
right. So how are we supposed to take care of all of these people? Most menopausal women have children and then they've got parents. They're in that sandwich generation where they're
Yeah.
responsible for everybody. Yet the focus is not on us. Well, guess what? We're going to run out of steam and then somebody's going to end up having to take care of us. And I think the last part of that too is remember to your audience, people are watching you. You are an influencer, whether you believe it or not. And so when you start to make these small changes, like, oh, let's go for a walk on our lunch hour. Oh, here's my gallon of water today. Oh, look at my lunch. It's so pretty. There's so much color. You are role modeling for people around you. I have young adults at home, a daughter and a son. And we've never told them that you should do this or you should do that. But I will tell you, Rita, they are both very active athletes and very just aware of what healthy fueling looks like. And like, it's a beautiful thing. So, role modeling, do as I do, not as I say, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? And they watch you. So your kids, your grandkids, anybody, they're watching you. Be an amazing role model for them and have them come to you and ask those questions like, hey, what do you think about this lunch? Or what do you think about these crackers? And educate them because that's probably our biggest responsibility is to make sure that next generation is better off than we were.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's really good. I love how you talked about the mindset and the self-worth because that comes up so often, whether I'm working with a client for anxiety or depression, or as we're trying to integrate the mental health and their physical health.
Hmm.
Like I don't get into the lane of physical health too much because like that's not my literally training. That's not my training, but it's so interesting how it integrates. Like if one is off, like the other pieces are off too. And so helping them to understand and to connect with other people just like you, Dr. Christine, that can help them with that physical health piece. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
They're so connected. You can't pull them apart. And think about like on a good day when you're just like you're vibing high, you're in the zone, you're in high frequency mode, right? That's because everything's kind of coming together physically, mentally, you're nourishing yourself. I want to stay in that high frequency as much as possible because then you're attracting people like you. Somebody like you and I who are really passionate about this. We kind of vibe at a different level. We attract each other, but we want to bring other people into that circle who we can impact as well. So the mental and the physical are inextricably connected. You cannot separate them. And where you are going to grow in terms of your mental toughness is when you wake up, you feel kind of crappy, but you get out of bed anyway, and you go to the gym and you get your workout done and you eat in alignment with your values versus I'm going to sleep in, hit the snooze button, and eat a brownie, right? Completely connected.
Yeah, that's good. That's some good stuff. Yeah, I do believe hugely about like the morning mindset. sometimes we're like, oh, I don't have time to set the mind this morning. I got to rush through my day. And then, like, middle of the day, then you're crabby, you're annoyed, you're
Hmm.
irritable. But it's like, set the tone in the morning. And honestly, reverse that, set it at evening.
Yes,
You know what I mean? So,
1000%.
yeah, as you're preparing for bed, like how you're putting into your mind, whatever you're watching, whatever you're interacting with, like all those different things are playing in your unconscious so that when you wake up, like you're ready to set your mind for the day. So today is going to be a good day. I'm going to
Yeah.
vibrate at the highest level of my truth and I'm going to attract the things that I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. As we start to wrap up, like I am just enjoying this conversation. I'm just so grateful that we're having this. Like I said, I honestly, in I guess vulnerability, I talked with my mom and I was like, I'm going through all of these different symptoms. I was like, why didn't you tell me about this? She's like,
Mm,
I didn't know I was going through it. I was like, how
right.
did you not know? I'm like, I know that something's not right. And so she didn't know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
our parents' generation were a little bit different, right? It was more
I,
of the suck it up and deal with it versus no, I'm going to seek solutions so that I can be my best self. I feel like you and I, when we get into our 70s and 80s, we're going to look completely different than our parents.
yeah.
And that's my goal. I want to get well past 100 with exceptional mobility, keep my brain intact, but it's all through self-care. It's all
Yeah.
related.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even just I love how you talked about it earlier, just the proteins of how that it's really good fuel for your brain and your body. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the hormone replacement has been shown to protect your brain as well. So there's no
Mm.
point in being in great physical shape if you end up with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, right? So it's
Ooh.
it's all related. We're learning more and more about how to prevent that cognitive decline, and I'm here for it. I want my brain to be amazing up until my last breath.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Christine, as we start to wrap up today, what are your takeaways or what are your words of wisdom or nuggets that you would like the listeners to walk away with?
The biggest nugget is self-care is not selfish. And the most important thing that you can do is make the investment in yourself, whatever that looks like for you, because it is going to exponentially influence everybody around you. And pay attention to the impact that you have as an influencer, because it is so powerful. So many of my clients, like, she's like, now I have a walking group every day at lunch. And I'm like, that's incredible. You did that. You started that. And it just takes one person to kind of kick off like the healthy behavior. So, be that person. You're either going to influence for good or for bad, but it's happening.
Mm.
So pay attention to that power. It is a superpower.
Wow. Wow. That's a nugget right there. You're going to influence either for good or bad.
Hmm.
So it's your choice.
It's your
Yeah.
choice. I'm here for good. I want to do all the good I can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my goal with this podcast is just to put out more good. There's every time you turn on the news, there's so much fear, so much dread, so much anxiety, so much of things going on in the world. And it's like I want to put out more good into the world. And so invest in yourself. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's sweet. Well, Dr. Christine, how can people connect with you if they want to know more about how to live and age gracefully?
So my website is mastermenopause.com. You can also find me on any social. It's at drchristineboev.com or drchristineboev. And you can message me and we can just hop on Zoom and chat and just, see how I can help you. It's my goal. Help as many people as possible.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I will put your contact information in the show notes so everyone can connect with you. Again, thank you so much for dropping your words of wisdom and breaking down the complex things about this menopause stage. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Rita.
All right, thanks, Dr. Christine. Have a good day, everyone. Take care. God bless.